We've been working in the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon burn scar doing groundwater monitoring, and we started in 2023, not knowing anything about how fire might influence aquifers. It's a huge unknown, and so we started with just a handful of wells in Mora County, and each year our network got a little bigger and a little bigger. And then in the summer of 2025, following significant moisture, we had what appears to be a spike in heavy metals that showed up in wells in Mora and northern San Miguel counties. And so we're now deeply engaged in trying to understand the wheres and the whys and the whens of these metals. And, is this a one-time spike, or is this something that may propagate for many years? How is this influenced by metals in the soil, metals in ash? Burned infrastructure, how is that material moving through the aquifers and potentially into the groundwater? And, sort of the million-dollar question is how and if fire suppressants may have added heavy metals into this already complicated equation. And so we're now working with New Mexico Environment Department of Health, many different federal and state agencies as a collaborative group to try to build a better understanding of what's happening to our aquifers post-fire. And in looking at the published literature globally, there's actually, you could maybe count on two hands the number of papers published looking at post-fire impact on groundwater. And so we're very much in a land of unknown, and we've got a long way to go to untangle all of this. Aquifers move a little more slowly and are more complicated in how they can respond to things in ways that are different than surface water and soil. And so we have to try to untangle that part of the equation that we can't see. We have to take our samples from a well bore. We can't just look down and see everything that's going on under there. And so our hope is to keep monitoring for many years and to try to really understand what's going on so that our communities know what they may or may not be exposed to and how to cope with it, whether it's filtration systems or alternate sources of water. How can we best serve our communities for the invisible resource on the mountain, which is the groundwater. Our hope is that this becomes an unfortunate baseline in how we respond to fire in New Mexico. And a big thing that hampered us here was we didn't have a lot of pre-fire baseline data for private wells. Private wells tend to get left out of a lot of things. And part of that is a desire on many people's part to keep themselves private, and we understand and respect that. And as independent consultants, it's a little easier for us to work with private landowners than it can be for agencies. But we have formed a DHSEM task force that's focused solely on pre, during, and post-fire water quality in the state of New Mexico. And Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon is going to be a big part of that lessons learned. And then how can we prepare communities in the highest risk areas, pre-fire monitoring. Even if it's very basic, it's still something. And then, during the fire, are we being mindful of impacts on wells and springs? Our ojitos are a big part of this story too. And then post-fire, what is a suite of analytes that we need to be really on top of monitoring? How many times a year? In what seasons? How do we understand that before, during, and after picture? And how long does that post-fire recovery have to take for groundwater?